As soon as the borders were made open to Kurland, Minescore, the Pan-Oceanian mining company, instantly bid for the very best contracts. They were so aggressive with their bidding that they managed to get far more access to the land than other corporations. However, this came at a price, as finding skilled labor, along with the bravery or foolhardiness needed to enter the mines, proved difficult. This has caused them to hire wherever they can, and although the pay is good and the technology advanced, the risks are high, and lacking the experienced staff to get out the most from the mines, they have spread themselves thin. They are still the #1 big boys in the blasted country, so no one messes with them. Unless the profit margin is juicy enough, that is. Pan-Oceania is the one faction I do not have any models for in Infinity. Unless you count Uma Sorensen from Defiance, and I don't. This gave me complete freedom to approach this faction with whatever color scheme my heart desired. And I desired color. Very vibrant color. The main base color was going to be jade for the armor, but it needed a solid dark blue to help give contrast between the dark recesses and light highlights that I had planned for later. The airbrush comes in great use to get the model covered quickly. I must warn you though, from here on out, nothing was quick about painting this model. With the dark blue base down, the next step was to mark out the areas of the model that were going to be painted pink and yellow. The thing about yellow is that over this dark blue base, it would have very poor coverage. But there is a way to get really good coverage with yellow that also helps give the yellow more vibrancy. And that is to paint it over pink. So what we are doing is marking out both the yellow and the pink areas with the pink paint. With that all done, we can now make an easy pass with the yellow, and it needs very few layers to get the desired coverage. God knows how many would have been needed if we just used the yellow over the blue, and it would not have reached the same vibrancy that is achieved here. In my previous paint work for the tags, I used the airbrush to paint a lot of the highlights over the primary color of the unit. This allowed me to get a lot of work done quickly and efficiently. Well, you know how I said nothing was going to be quick about this model? Well, that's why. I decided to paint a dark blue to jade blend on every panel, of which there were a lot, by hand. Don't ask me why, I just did. And I quickly got bored of doing that after doing some of the upper body and arms. I needed something else to do, and this model had that big fishbowl helmet staring at me, and so I used that as my distraction. I wanted to accentuate the domed shape of the helmet while also making the visor opaque, but I wasn't quite sure how to go about it, so I just tried stuff until it worked. First, it got a generous white base. Then I tried spreading some ink on the surface, hoping for a natural depth to occur with intensity building toward the edges. Of course, that did not work. And when the ink dried, I went about trying to fix this by painting each individual angular triangle in different shades of light blue, with the lightest in the center working out to darker shades. This was better, but far from what I was after. Taking a very light blue as an edge highlight, I then painted the edge of each triangle to make a clear separation from one another and give the impression that the light was being reflected the most intensely on the edges of each glass panel. Again, things were now moving in a direction that was improving the effect, but it still needed more. I had a go at glazing some purple into the bottom curvature of the helmet, but I found it difficult to get the brush strokes and blend smooth. I took a step back and went back to painting more of the jade panels. However, I really liked the idea of adding different tones to the dome of the head. I just had to change the approach. Time again for the airbrush to be dusted off and put into action. To protect the rest of the model from any overspray, I masked the model around the helmet with some poster tack, before spraying a diluted purple ink from below. This was now starting to look much better. To help contrast with the cool purple from below, I switched up to a warm yellow from the top of the dome. This gave a subtle contrast and finally gave the domed helmet some depth. Okay, back to jade paneling. Well, most of it's done, but I needed another break, so I began on the pink paneling. The base coat itself was a little pale, so I hit it with a deeper pink to increase the contrast in the model. This was then worked up with lighter pinks in a similar approach to the jade paneling. The yellows were approached in exactly the same way. The base was already quite a deep yellow, so it only needed lighter yellows. On the model's right hand, he has what looks like a styrofoam hot wire cutter turned up to 11, and I wanted to have it look like it was hot and ready to cut. To try and get the effect of heat, I wanted to show the range of temperatures through colors of red to yellow. I began with a very dark red, then worked up to a lighter shade of red to orange and yellow. The finished look was still quite dark, but it gave the effect I was looking for. At this point, looking at the model with still lots of jade to do, I realized there was probably too much blue. The cargo pack on his back was a prime opportunity to break up the color, and I went about going over the whole thing in pink. The slits in each cube I decided were going to be emitting some light, so using the blues on my wet palette, I worked these into each of the recesses and built them up to a bright white coming from their center. Now, this tag is curious as it has wheels for knees, which suggests it may transform into a buggy for dealing with different terrain. I wanted these to stand out a little, so I avoided using the colors I had been using so far and went for a clean metal in a rim with black tires. The metal was painted using grayscale black to white non-metallic metal with a touch of turquoise glazed into the midtones to give it that extra clean shine. The tires were also given some grey highlights where there would be some light catching on them, along with a little brown and orange worked in to show they had been used recently on the desert floor. There were a few areas of the model that also had metal bars, and these were all painted with a grayscale NMM. And with them done, and finally all the jade armor finished, the model was complete. Wow, what a process this was. I did enjoy it, but I certainly took the long way around for this one. It has made this the most unique looking paint scheme for one of the most unique looking tags in Tag Raid, or Infinity for that matter. With all the 4 Corporation tags finished, now we have the Mega Beasts to look forward to, and I hesitate to call these miniatures. See you in the next video.